Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to again thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Adrienne Ambrose, and I will be your hostess with the mostest today for our live ProtoPie workshop. It's a ProtoPie 101, and again, welcome everybody. There I am. I'm Adrienne Ambrose. I'm a customer success manager with ProtoPie. I've been here for a little bit over the year, and I help customers achieve their goals with our prototyping software. I'm located in Phoenix, Arizona, and in case you're wondering, yes, it's extremely hot right now during the summer. My co-host today is Kobe. He will be working with prototypes and showing you how easy it is to use with ProtoPie and actually go through what ProtoPie is. Kobe is pretty amazing. So definitely we've leveraged him as an expert. All my customers love him, and we could not live without Kobe. So a little housekeeping today. Kobe will go ahead and introduce himself. There is a live demo and build interaction, and then there's a Q&A session. I will fix the Q&A once Kobe takes off with his demo and introduction.
Quick thing before I get into my intro. Are you sharing your screen? Because I can't see it on my end, and I know we don't have chat, so it's a bit harder for them to relay that information.
It says I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, lovely. I just can't see it on my end. I just wanted to double check because I can't see chat.
I actually can see the chat.
I can
Or
see it. Okay,
actually,
lovely. That's all I needed. I just needed one person to say
yeah,
yes.
for the
That's all.
Q&A, can everybody, you should be able to see anonymous. I can see it. Okay. So they can
Lovely.
see my screen. Okay. Phew, I panicked there for a moment. Always with a webinar, once in a while, you never know if something exciting happens. Okay. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. And then after Kobe does his demo, there's a Q&A session. Feel free to, if you can, I'll work on fixing the chat. There's a Q&A session afterwards. If you happen not to be able to grab a question or it doesn't get answered, or you think of something after the webinar, please feel free to email me. I'll go ahead and make sure that's answered for you after the webinar. So that being said, I'm going to let Kobe take the lead, and Kobe, go right ahead.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Kobe. I'm one of the creative technologists here at ProtoPie. I'm located in Seattle, Washington, so I'm over in the Americas. I don't know where that is for all you guys. It's nice and early in the morning at 10 o'clock for me, and I'm ready to do this demo for you guys. So first off, thank you guys for joining this demo. Adrienne already kind of went over everything I'm going to go over, but I'll do it anyways. My agenda today, I will walk you through kind of what is ProtoPie for everyone who's new. Afterwards, I'll give a quick live demo just to showcase how much you can accomplish in ProtoPie in a very short amount of time. And then we'll end it off with a Q&A. So as Adrienne had already mentioned, if you have any questions at any time, feel free to use our Q&A part of this webinar, leave them in there, or you can save them for the end and we can do them live as well. All right, so what is ProtoPie? If you're here, you probably already know that ProtoPie is a software that allows you to create realistic, high-fidelity prototypes of your ideas without a single line of code. But I like to think of ProtoPie as a bit more than that. I like to think of ProtoPie as an ecosystem. So starting out, you have ProtoPie Studio. This is your desktop authoring software. This is where 90% of your work will be done when you're actually creating your prototypes from your initial designs. Speaking of your initial designs, we also have our import plugins. So this is from tools like Figma, Sketch, and Adobe XD if you're still using it. We also have the ProtoPie Player, which is a free app available for both iOS and Android, allowing full interaction capabilities right in your device, including the ability to interact with native sensors and features on said device. Then we have ProtoPie Cloud. So this is for sharing, collaboration, user testing, and developer handoff. And then lastly, we have ProtoPie Connect. So this is when you want to take your prototyping beyond just digital screens, and you want to prototype with all sorts of hardware devices and data APIs. So how does all of this work? We here at ProtoPie believe any interaction can be created with just three components: an object, a trigger, and a response. So you can think of it as a if this, then that format. So the object is the square layer, a tap interaction is the trigger that causes that square layer to move in response. So This can also be applied to real life. So in this instance, we have our object, the giant yellow ball, and we have our trigger, which is throwing the ball, which will give us our final response. Though that is in real life, we probably have a bit more of a practical application with how you would use it in ProtoPie. So here is the start of a prototype. And with this prototype, there is a drag trigger associated with these bottom cards. And in response, they both can scroll and rotate in 3D space. And then here is the second half of the prototype. Where this gets interesting is the same scroll response that happens in the bottom half now becomes the trigger for the animation on the top half of the prototype. So as I drag my card down below, I get those initial responses, but I can also have my album and album cover move in sync with that trigger. So speaking of triggers, many triggers are the result of a user's direct interaction, like these touch triggers. These ones are conditional, as they react to certain real-time conditions inside your prototype. These ones work with mouse. These ones with keyboard input. And then these ones are unique to ProtoPie. They allow you to work with the native sensors and features on your mobile device. So in response to any of these triggers, you can do basic things such as changing the properties of the objects in your scene. So that could be moving objects, that could be scaling objects, that could be changing a object's opacity. Or you could do more advanced things like starting a device's camera. You could enable microphone for voice input. You could play videos, you can play sounds. You can update the values of variables you've created for your own interactions. And then this one right in the middle, this one is special. It is called a condition, and it's neither a trigger nor a response, but it allows your prototype to make real-time decisions on which responses to execute for any given trigger. It's incredibly powerful, and it's really the cornerstone of ProtoPie's ability to create realistic, high fidelity, but mostly highly functional renditions of your ideas. So this is the full illustration we use to showcase all of the different triggers and responses available in ProtoPie. It's kind of like our own periodic table of elements, but instead of elements making up the physical world, we have these interaction pieces that make up our own digital world. So again, the items on the left are triggers or input events, while the item on the right are your responses or things that happen as a result of that trigger event. So combine all of these interaction pieces any way you like, and all of this is possible. None of these are doctored in any way. They're all actual screen recordings of prototypes made with ProtoPie. And again, this is all without writing a single line of code. That is right, no code prototyping. Oh, and by the way, did I mention you can use ProtoPie to create experiences for all sorts of screens? So yes, you are seeing that right. That is anything from a smartwatch prototyping to tablet to desktop to TV prototyping as well. Also on the slide, it mentions voice interactions, which I'm actually going to demonstrate for you guys today as well. And this is something ProtoPie does exceptionally well, baked right into ProtoPie Studio. Additionally, we also have the ability to use ProtoPie Connect, which is a companion product to ProtoPie Studio, which allows integrations with all sorts of hardware devices and data APIs. ProtoPie also allows you to create fully functional, customizable components, like mini prototypes within your prototypes. Oh, I think I jumped a slide. Adrian, which I can't see the slide. What slide are you on by chance? Hello?
Sorry about that. We're on the ProtoPie Connect.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Okay, I backtrack. I definitely did jump a couple slides ahead. Okay, ProtoPie Connect. Thank you for that. ProtoPie Connect comes built in with a number of plugins that allow you to work with the gamepads, the Logitech G29 steering wheel, Arduinos, IFTTT, and block dots, which is a no-code approach for Arduino programming. And as I already mentioned, the ability to connect to API connections. So we have all of that with us. We also have the ability to create built-in plugins, which ProtoPie Connect doesn't support. So at our highest tier enterprise subscribers, the ability to write custom plugins to work with pretty much anything you can dream up. So this is an example of a ProtoPie file created in ProtoPie Studio, interacting with a smart light connected through an open source product called Home Assistant. And then a Node.js plugin app had been written to integrate ProtoPie Connect with Home Assistant itself. And if you notice, this experience is truly two-way. It doesn't matter if I interact with the light through ProtoPie or directly through Home Assistant's native UI. Both of these experiences stay completely in sync with each other. All right, now I think I've caught up to myself. ProtoPie allows you to create fully functional, customizable components. So think mini prototypes within your prototypes. So if you have a design system, you can create shareable libraries that anyone on your team can use, filled with the functional versions of your design interaction system components. So in this example, we are using 4 copies of a smart home light brightness control. And then each can be customized with its own label and icon. And when we preview this prototype, we can see that the functionality is already built in each of these sliders themselves. We can see how each one operates independently from one another. It's also easy to share your work with others. As you're working, just upload your file to the cloud and then set your access settings accordingly. So you could share with just your team. You could share with stakeholders outside your organization. They could interact with the prototype either directly through the web browser interface with that link, or they could run that prototype directly on their mobile device, again, using the free ProtoPie Player app. And when you're ready to start development, you can use ProtoPie Cloud to create a interaction recording. So your engineering team will be able to inspect all of your interaction animations that you've created in real time so they can build exactly what you had in mind, with hopefully now no more guesswork. It's also easy to conduct user testing within ProtoPie. So as part of the enterprise plan, you either gain access to our own beta version of user testing. So this is for online or in-person moderated sessions. That being said, if you're not part of the enterprise plan and you still want to use user testing with ProtoPie, we work directly in tandem with multiple user testing tools like Useberry, Lookback, usertesting.com, and User Zoom Go. So who all uses ProtoPie? I know that's the big question today. That's more than 700,000 users across 182 countries and more than 50,000 companies. That is who. We've partnered with a range of businesses, including Apple, Google, Microsoft, Toyota, LG, Sony, Johnson & Johnson, and PayPal, spreading throughout the fields of high-tech automotive, appliances, gaming, medtech, and finance. So with a range of companies and target markets, we know ProtoPie's features can seamlessly integrate into any type of product design process. All right, on to some demo time. All right, let me change my view and share my screen.
And Kobe, you should be all set. You have the controls.
Lovely. Okay. So we're going to jump right into our demo time. So here, the demo I have for you guys today is I have a very simple 3-screen flow that I could kind of work through in Figma, but I really want to elevate the experience once we use it in ProtoPie, which all we have is a name scene, a password scene, and a home scene. And the big things that we want to achieve today are things that we just can't do inside Figma. One of them being inputs. I wanted people to actually type my name into this input field. I would love this mic to listen to what I can say. And actually, I could say my name into this input field as well. We also want to create a password field where we get our user to then jump to the next scene if our password matches, or if it doesn't, we actually have our error text show. And all of that can be done in Figma, but it can't be done to the same extent. And I want to show you to the extent that you can do that inside ProtoPie. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do today is we need to take our Figma designs that we've built and we need to bring them into ProtoPie to prototype. So I simply have my scenes open, I have my designs. All I need to do is come down into our actions and plugins. And mine's in recents because I work here and I use it all of the time. But if yours isn't in recents, simply move over to plugins and then type in ProtoPie. And it'll be this main one right here. Once you have it selected, it will prompt you to open up the ProtoPie Studio app on your computer. I've already done it since I've prepared for this webinar, but if you have not, make sure that you open it so it actually knows where to send your files to. Okay, so now all I have to do is select the layers to export. So I can select my 3 frames that I want to export into my ProtoPie file. So I have 3 scenes that will export, so I'll click export. There we go. It's loading on in. Another thing to note is that if you ever using Mac or Windows, sometimes it'll jump you early, and a lot of computers have it where apps that are running in the background will slow down. So you saw how that slowed down a little bit when I moved into ProtoPie. So a quick tip, hop back into Figma, it will load much quicker, and then it'll jump you right back in when you're ready. Okay, so I have my 3 designs. I have my name, I have my password, and I have my home. I have one thing that I need to correct before I start prototyping. Is currently this is set to an iPhone 16, which is not what I have it set to inside Figma. I have it set to an iPhone 14, so I'm just going to make that change right here. I can select our device and then choose the device that I'm actually prototyping for. Here we go. Now we have it set to our iPhone 14. All of our designs are neatly set in our screen. Okay, lovely. So we're on to prototyping, just like that. So here we have our name scene, then we're going to move to our password and our home, and then we're going to call it a day. So inside my name scene, I have a couple things I want to do. I want to have a input field where I can actually type my name. I want to have this microphone be able to listen to what I say. And then I want to have a dynamic continue button that responds to things that are happening into my scene live. So let's work through all of those 3 in order. So first, we have our input field. Right now, this does nothing. If I go preview, I can't type my name. I can't do anything. So all we have to do to fix this is I'm going to select our input field right here that I have, and I'm actually going to create a input field directly in ProtoPie. So under text, we have input where we can use live input, and I'm going to, down in here, I'm just going to drag this item into this auto layout box that I already have. I'm going to make it about the same size so that when I replace this text, it will pop right in. So if I get rid of this text, I now have a input field inside my auto layout container. That being said, it looks a little off. So let's change it to match our original design. Let's change our font to Inter. I'll set it to 18. We don't want it italics. We'll make it semi-bold. We don't want it to say placeholder, but we can change the placeholder text of our input field. So I'm going to change this to name. And I don't love that this is gray when all of this is white. So I could either come in and change this to white, or I can have it be another color and I can just get rid of the fill. Either way, now I have a input field inside my auto layout container that I already brought in from Figma. So now if I go into preview, as I select in, I now get our modal for our input, so I can actually start typing. I can type whatever I want, and it will dynamically populate inside our field. So my name is Kobe, so I can type Kobe right in. All right, so we're already a third of the way done with what we want to do on this screen. The second thing we want to do is we want to make our input field dynamic to our voice. So we can select our item. So in this case, we have our mic. And whenever I tap on my mic icon, I want it to listen to what I have to say. And then I want it to take what I've said and put it inside our input field. So in this case, I want to work back with our object, trigger, and response. So our object is our mic icon. Our trigger is going to be whenever I tap on it. So whenever I tap, I like to name things as we go. So I'm going to say whenever I tap on our mic, I want a response to happen. And in this case, I want it to first come back into Figma and I can show you. I want it to change colors. So this is going to be its deactivated state, and this is going to be its active state. So I want it to go whenever I tap, I want it to change to its active state. So I could take the wrapper, and instead I want to change the color of our vector. But currently, I don't actually see the ability to change the fill of our vector, which is worrisome because that's what I want to do. But whenever you bring in text or vectors from Figma to ProtoPie, they'll come in as flat bitmaps, which is only for performance when everything's coming in, but that means we can't edit them. except for we can. So all I have to do is select the layer that I want to then be able to make edits to, in this case, our vector layer. And I just come up and click Make Editable. And now I have our fill property that I can change right here, and our vector remains the same vector that it was to begin with. So all I have to do is come up to color now, and instead of changing border, I'll change our fill. And I want to change it to a green, but I remember I have that green back in Figma, so I'm just going to hop on back, and I'm actually just going to select and copy, so Command C or Control C on Windows. And all I have to do is come into our fill and paste in our color. So now whenever I tap, we've already have our first interaction. It's going to change to green. So we're looking good so far, but I want to add to this interaction. I want to have it start listening to what I have to say. So this is again where you can have multiple responses under the same action. So whenever I tap my mic, I also want to start listening. I want to start listening to what I have to say. So ProtoPie is now going to respond with it start listening, but we need something to happen after I've finished talking. And this is where we can use another trigger called voice command. So this voice command trigger is set to after speaking, and usually it will only fire if there's a command, and I can include a phrase. So this could be, what's the weather? And it hears the word weather, and then I pull up a weather modal, or close the garage door, and then I have a garage animation play. So it's only when I say a specific thing. In this case, I don't want it to be when I say a specific thing, because your name and my name aren't the same. It could be anyone's name. So instead, I'm going to get rid of our command, and it's just going to be simply after speaking. So once I'm done, I want this trigger to then fire. So once this is fired, once I'm done speaking, what do we want to have happen? We, one, want our active state of our mic to change from green back to black because we've stopped listening. And then I want to populate our input field with whatever I've said. So let's add those two responses. I can add a color change, and we can choose our vector layer all the way down here. And then I want to change the fill. And I think this is a pure black, so I'm going to select, and I could just guess, but instead I'm going to use the eyedropper tool and make sure I get it spot on. All right, there we go. So now it's going to change from green to black. And in this case, now I want to do one more, which is I want our text inside our input field to change. So we can add a new response, which is text. Then I can choose our layer, which is our input field. And here we can use our first formula. Instead of it being predefined, we want it to be live. We want it to be dynamic. So we can use a formula for this. And I can open up our expression. And I'm going to do something kind of nifty. I'm going to use a $sign. And this is going to showcase all of our predefined variables. So these are things that ProtoPie stores for us to use live. And in this case, I want to use one where it's storing the transcript of the words I'm saying, and then I can repopulate it with whatever I've just said. So $sign, and in this case, voice transcript. As well, I also want to highlight, I'm not going to pull it over, but this little question mark right here is if you're ever doing formulas and you need help on documentation, it's right there for you so you can learn more about voice transcripts or any of our other predefined variables or anything else with formulas that gets a little complicated. Okay, so we have our text here. We have our color change. So if I hit preview, our input field still works as it should. But now if I hit our mic icon, Bob. Once I've done saying Bob, our animation change and our input field populates it with the words that I've said. So we're looking great. Our name field is now almost done. We now need to work on our continue button. We need to be able to move on to our next scene. And the thing is with this continue button is I actually know from our flow that we're going to use it for the same instance. Whenever I type in here, I want it to activate to tell our users, hey, we can move to the next scene. I'm going to do it again for our password scene where I want it to turn on when I've typed in an input field. So in this case, we're going to create our first component. So I'm going to select our continue button. I'm going to right click and create component. And with our component created, I can come into local components and double click, or I can click edit main component when I have this item selected. So once I'm inside this component, I can now work on the two fates that I want it to do. I want it to either stay in its deactivated state like this, or I want it to turn on as our user is typing. So we're going to do our first send and receive message. So inside trigger, I'm going to receive a message from our scene. I'm just going to call it text. And then I want it to be assigned to a variable inside our component, but currently I don't have a variable selected. So I'm going to come down to variables, click, and then click our plus button. And this way I can create a variable for the scene. I'm going to call it text. A big thing with variables is you only have 3 different options for how they can be stored, either as numbers or as text or as colors. And in this case, I'm going to be dealing with our input field when I'm typing into our field. That's going to be live text. So I'm going to choose text as our property. So whenever I receive our text from our input field from our main scene, I want our component to react. I only want it to react based off of this variable, which I'm assigning it to right now. So I have 2 decisions to make. I have it whether it should be active or it should be inactive. So whenever you need to make a decision inside ProtoPie, that's when it's time to use a condition. So we can use our condition. And we can say when our text from our input field, when it is not equal to nothing, so something's there, that means we want it to be active. So in this case, we can take the opacity and we can change it from our button. So currently our button is at 10% and we want to move it to 100 so it looks like it's in our active state. So I'll take our opacity and move it up to 100. So in this case, we'll call it button on, and I'll call this our active state. So now I have it. If there's text in our input field, we want it on, but we also want the reverse. If there's no text in our input field, we want it off. So I can duplicate this condition with our response inside. I'm going to call this inactive. And in this case, I don't want it to be the same condition. I want it to be when our text is equal to nothing, when there's nothing there. Then I want it to be equal to nothing. And instead of it being turned on, I want to turn it back to its default state, which was 10% opacity. So now we have the ability to change this button, but our button isn't going to do anything because there's no indicator that it should do anything. And that's what we can change right now. So we can add a trigger, and we're going to use our first conditional. And this is going to react to our scene in real time, so I can detect whenever something changes. And this something that I want to detect is whether or not our input field, whether or not its text property is changing. So if the text property ever changes from our input text, I can spell input, input text, whenever that changes, we want an action to fire. And what we want to fire is we want to send that message into the component so it knows what's happening in our main scene. So I can use a send, and we already have our component here, so it's going to populate this with text. So I want to send that message, but then I also want to send over the value of what's actively in our input field. So I'll send a value together. And in this case, I can open up our formula again and add a reference. And here I'll choose input, so whatever is in our input field, but specifically, I can just use a dot and I get all of the properties from this field. So inside our input frame, if it ever moves left or right, it could give us our X property or our Y or our width. But in this case, I want to choose our text. So whenever our text changes inside our input field, I want to send a message to our component, and I want it to send along whatever is inside our input field. So we can put that in our text right here, send text to scene. And then we're sending over our input text. So now if we preview, we can see that when I type and I say Kobe, and I misspell my own name, this button has now turned to black, which is great, but I don't love that I can't see it when it's happening. I can't see that it's turned to gray when it's behind our keyboard modal that pops up. So there's a way to change this. And this is using focus states. So whenever I'm focusing into our input field to start typing or focusing out, I can change what is actually happening in our scene. So I can add a trigger for our input field, which is focus. So whenever I use our layer, our input field, whenever I focus in, I want to change the position of our button. I want to move it up so that it's not in the way of our other keyboard modal. So right here we have move, and I can choose our button, and I can move it to a specific X or Y coordinate, but I want to move it relative. So I want to move it by a specific amount of height. And in this case, we're going to use another predefined variable. So all I have to do is click Formula, open it up, use the $sign, and we have another one made for this exact instance, which is called keyboard height. So it knows the exact height of that modal that's going to pop up for your user. So in this case, whatever that height is, I want to move it up by that amount. So let's say this variable is 400. Currently, if it's moved by 400, it's actually going to move it down because y starts at the top. So instead, I want to add a minus. So it'll be minus 400. So I move it up for our user's view. So we're going to move this up, and we're going to see what happens. So when I go in to type my name, the continue button moves up with this keyboard. So when I type, we can see that in real time it changes right in front of our eyes. But if I ever deselect or focus out, then the keyboard has moved, but our button is still here, which isn't lovely. So we want to move that back down. So I can actually duplicate this, Command D. We're going to change this to focus out whenever I deselect from our input field. And instead of moving it up, I want to move it down. And I want to make sure that instead of going up, we're going to go down. So instead, we're going to move it from minus to positive. So now when I focus in, it comes in. When I focus out, it moves with that keyboard modal as I'm actually using it. So we're now done with our first scene. I can type in Kobe. This is my name. Lovely. I could hit confirm. But we don't go anywhere. We haven't made the jump yet. And this is the final thing we need to do for this scene. So I need to add a trigger to our confirm button. And when I had a tap on this button, I want to jump to the next scene. But I only want to jump to the next scene if I've actually typed something in our input field. If it's blank, then I shouldn't be able to jump because my user shouldn't be allowed to. So we can add a condition on this button, where all I have to do is select condition. And we can say if our input field, if its text property is not equal to nothing. So again, if there is something in that field, then we can jump to our password scene. We'll just set it to smart animate. So now if I preview, nothing's happened. I hit the confirm button, continue button, nothing happens. It's great. I use voice, Matthew. It populates, it tells me, hey, I can go. I've populated this with our opacity change. And now that we have stuff in our input field, I can hit confirm. And just like that, we've smart animated over into our next scene, which is our password scene. Okay, lovely. We're making great progress. We're now on to our password scene. And a lot of things look eerily similar to our last scene. So we can actually just copy things over, like our input field. So right here, I'm just going to copy our input field. And I'm just going to come into this auto layout container. And I'm just going to paste this in. I'm going to get rid of this mic. I don't think we need to use it for these ones. And then I'm going to get rid of our initial password. So right here, I also need to change this from name. I can change our placeholder text. I can change it to password. Lovely. And then I need to do it once more with our confirm password field. So I'll paste it in. I'll get rid of this one. Get rid of our mic. And then I'll change our placeholder text to confirm. Oh, never mind. Two M's. There you go. Password and confirm. I don't love that these are both input ones right here. So I'll actually select our first one, just call it P1 for password 1, and I'll just call this one P2 for password 2. Okay, so we have two input fields and we can preview them. We can see that we can type dynamically right into them, which is great if it's a normal input field, but this is a password. So it's not great that you guys can see my password that I'm typing into my fields. But that's something you can also change with these input fields. So if I select both and we slide all the way down in our properties, down to here, which is keyboard options. Right here, we have different types of keyboard options we can select. Right now, it's selected to type. We could change it to something like a numerical keyboard. So if I preview this, when I start typing, the numerical keyboard will pull up instead of the text one. Or we could do something like change it to a text password. So our text modal will still come up, but it'll be previewed as if you're actually typing a real password. So now my password is actually protected from you guys, so you guys aren't going to all steal it from me now that I have it hidden from our user's view. Okay, so we're making good progress. We have our password now set with these input fields, but now we need to bring in over the other idea, or not ideas, the other object that we've already created in our last scene, which is our continue button. So all I have to do, instead of coming back over here and copy and pasting, I can actually just drag in from our local components, which is right here. I can just drag it right in. So now I have our component. I'm going to place it right over top, and I'm going to get rid of our old one. So now we have our password fields ready to work. We have our continue button ready to work as well, but none of it's functional other than just being able to type in. So we need to do a bunch of the same actions that we've already done before, but we're just going to rework them for this scene. So the first one is if I start typing into our password one, I want our continue button to be dynamic. So we can add a trigger just like we had done before with a detect. So this is going to detect our password one, and then we're going to detect its text property. So we're going to detect P1 text. And whenever something changes, we want to send a message. Since we've already brought our component in, we know that we can send our text. And we want to send over the value of what's ever in this current field. So we can add our reference, our password one dot text. So to choose the property of this item as well. So password one's text is going to be sent to our scene. So send text to scene with our P1 text. And I'm just naming things here so it's easier to view, but you don't have to have good naming conventions with your triggers and responses. I think it's good practice, which is why I'm doing it right now as well. So now in preview, if I go into password and I type one, we can see that this has changed. But we had the same problem as last time, which is our text modal comes up and I can't see our continue button anymore, which I don't love. So I'm just going to hop back over to name. I'm actually just going to copy these items, our focus states. So I'm going to hop over to password and I'm just going to command V and paste them right in. And whenever it's orange, it means your item isn't selected. There's nothing that this is going to be correlative to, so I can actually change that right now. So I can select our focus states, and I'm going to choose our password one. And then right now we don't have anything that's going to move. We don't have a selected layer, so I can select both of them and select our continue button. So now in preview, when I go into password, I type one, we see it change, and as I select in and out, it's changing as well. But what happens if I select our second password? We haven't done anything for that yet. So when I select it, this is focused in, so our keyboard is still up, but our button moves down because I focused out of our password one. So we can simply just duplicate these. I'm going to label this one as P1 for password one. And this one is going to be for P2, or no, P1 as well. We need to make our second one for P2. So I'm going to duplicate these for our second password field. There we go. So this one is password 2, and this one is password 2. Lovely. So now if I preview, I focus in, our continue button moves up. This one also, when I focus in, it stays up. If I deselect our second one, it moves down. If I focus in. Now, no matter which input field I use, our continue button or confirm button is right there in view. So now as I type forward, we can see it change in real time. Okay, we're making a lot of progress. I don't love how all of this is just right here in view. I'm actually going to select all of them, and I'm going to Command G or Control G on Windows and create a group. And I'm just going to call this Focus States. So now I can give myself a little bit more breathing room over here in my triggers and responses. Okay, so we have our password, our confirm, our continue button is ready to roll. Let's make our happy path. So I want to be able to move into my next scene. So I hit confirm, continue. I add a trigger, I add a tap. And on this one, I want to add a condition, which is saying whether or not I can move into my next scene. So this is going to be, is password one, is it equal to our password two? So we can do text, is it equal to password two, text. If it is equal, then we can jump to our next scene. So we can add a jump to our home screen. And I'll do a slide in for this one. So in preview, these are equal. So if I hit confirm now, it's going to jump, which isn't ideal. I want it to only be when these are both equal, and we can add a compound condition. So two things have to be true. So our password one field its text property should also not be equal to nothing. So there should be something in there. So now if I preview again, if I hit confirm, nothing's going to happen. I type 1, I type 1, I can jump into our next scene. So our happy path is all set up. What about our error case? What about when it's wrong? So in this case, we have our jumping into our next scene, but we want to do one when it doesn't work. So whenever I tap on our continue button. So we're going to add a new condition for this decision. And this is when our password 1 text property, when it doesn't match our password 2 text property. Just like that. When it's not equal, I want to take this error text and I want to turn it on. Just like that. I want to change its opacity to 100. So I'm going to keep it off at 0. And whenever it's wrong, I want to take our opacity and I want to move it to 100. So error on. So when I preview, I type 1, 2, 3, I type 1, I hit confirm, password's wrong. Now I type 2, 3, but I actually type 2, 4, I hit confirm. It's still wrong. I didn't get any new information, which is really bad for my user. I want to be able to tell them, hey, you've typed in a new password and it's not correct, even though this looks correct to me. So what I actually want to do is I want to take our error text, and whenever I focus in into our focus states, I want to turn it off. So I'm just going to duplicate our on. I'm going to change it to off, bring it to 0. Do the same here. Bring it to 0. And now when I preview 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, it's wrong. I type it back in. I try to get it right. And now it's right. Now I get a new instance for our error text. But I don't feel like that's enough. I want to add a little bit more to how this feels so we can actually add motion into this condition when it's wrong. So I want our continue button to kind of shake at our user to say, no, 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 not today. So we can add a move. And I can move it to a specific spot, but I want to move it by a specific amount. So we can move it by negative 10 pixels to the left. I'll move it down to 0.1. We'll duplicate, move it over, move it to the right 20 pixels, duplicate it again, move it to the left by negative 20 pixels. Oh, I just zoomed out instead. There we go. And we'll do once more. We'll move it over by 10 pixels to the right, so it should be recentered. So now 1, 2, 3, 1, it's wrong. I can hit a bunch of times. It really tells me no. I hit 1, 2, 3. I hit confirm. We move on to our next scene. So we're done. Essentially, we have one last thing. I also realize I think we're a little short on time. Hopefully we can run over a little bit.
Yeah, Kobe, I just want to do a time check because we still have some Q&A.
We do as well. I have one. Well, actually, I guess we can just ask our has chat got working? I don't know. I can't see chat.
It's actually going to be everybody. If you want Q&A, actually is working great. I can't
Oh,
change
lovely.
the
Okay.
setting to chat. Yeah. So if you want, Kobe, I can go through some of these questions super quick. They're
Yeah.
not too long. And Wig, you were the first one. I think your concept was explain about the CTA. If you still need that, let me know. And then Dave Taylor had a question. What would happen if you string longer than the field?
If you string longer than the field in the input field, like if I type longer than, I'm assuming that's the question. Um, if that's the case, whenever you're in an input field like name, if I start typing and it goes to the edges, it will just roll over like this. I mean, this is a really, really long name, but I'm assuming that's what you mean by the strings being too long to the input field itself, is what I've gathered.
And Dave, let us know if that answered your question. Jonathan had a really good one.
Okay.
Can't bring Figma variables or components in. So if I want to update property like color or my design system, all my prototypes need to be updated. Kobe, is that a true statement?
Yes. So just as I created our continue button here, if you have your continue button that you've made inside Figma and then in ProtoPie said this is like a hover state, I would then just change the continue button in here from black to red. And now when I preview it, it would be a red component in all of our items as well once I start typing. So you would still have to update it in ProtoPie, but it's the same property that you would change if you created that component inside ProtoPie as well.
And then there was another question, the concern of having to rebuild some of his interactive components in our Pro plan, especially with dealing with many artboards. The question is there a way to have interactive component library in Pro plan? or how it was easy to design and pro plan with some of the interactive components. And that question might be a little bit longer, so we might have to answer that via email. But Kobe, do you have an oversight or any recommendations?
Yeah, I would still recommend not designing your components inherently in ProtoPie themselves. I like designing in Figma and then bringing them over and then making my adjustments and then making them into a library. Depending on your plan, you might not be able to make it into a robust team library, but you'd still be able to save individual components like I did here with this continue button. And then you can just bring that continue button into another scene or file altogether, and it would retain all of these same properties. So I would still recommend doing components in that way, but that's totally up to you as well.
And then Pedro had a question. How would you describe or list similarities between ProtoPie and Principal app? Kobe, do you have any insights on that, such as like symbols and components? If that's a longer question, we can also answer that
It's a
after
bit
the.
of a longer one that I could get into. I'm not a huge Principal user, so I don't know too much. I know that a lot of the advanced capabilities of ProtoPie involving like interaction systems is a bit different. So I think there's a lot more nuance there, and I don't want to spend too much time getting into it. But I would love we can send a follow-up to you, no problem.
Pedro, I'll take that as an action item. We'll follow up with you and do some type of analysis. It'll probably be more towards the end of the week. Work with our team in Korea to get you an update on that. And that is it for Q&A. I know we are a little bit over time. If Kobe has just one more option to show us, if you guys want to still stay, we will keep it open. We totally know that your time is valuable. So if you need to drop, feel free to go ahead. And Kobe, do you want to finish out your demo?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so here we have one last thing, and I mean literally one last thing, which is right here we have our name, which is Kobe. How can I help you today? What if your name isn't Kobe? All of this has been for naught. I wanted to make sure that we highlight the ability to take variables from one scene and bring them to other scenes. I think being able to use data in this way is super powerful. So here in this scene, we have hello, what is your name? So if I go into this, whenever I type, I want to add a variable, which is a name variable that I can use in our final scene. So we have variables down here. We have a for all scenes variable. I'm going to call it name. And inside our detect, I'm going to add a assign. I want to assign the value of this name variable. And I can use a formula as we've done before. I'm going to add a reference, which is our input, and then use a dot for text. There we go. So when this is assigned, when our name is assigned, we want to see what changes. And so if I preview this and I type in my name, we're going to assume that this is changing to my name, but we can't see it, which is kind of unfortunate. Though we can, by using our little debug icon down here, we just simply select, we can bring it down into our prototype and we can see it change live. So now when I type, we should see it change, or in this case, not see it change, which means something is going wrong with this interaction. So I can check our variable and I see it's set to number. So this is something I mentioned earlier, which making sure it's correctly assigned to number or text or color. In this case, I'm dealing with text. So now I can preview this variable in real time where I type in my name. There we go. It says Kobe. And now if I hit confirm, I can see that this variable follows along with me. So 1 and 1, and now I have it here. And this name, if it's not Kobe, can now be populated right here where this name is. So we're going to do just that, and we'll call it a day. So I'm going to add a trigger on start. The second that this prototype starts, I want this name to be changed. So we're going to use text to change it. We're going to change our text field. I have no layer available, but that is fine. We know that these layers come in as flat bitmaps. All I have to do is click make editable. And now I can edit this layer. We can choose formula to use a dynamic string. And we're going to do something kind of nifty. We're going to use the variable that we are sending over. So we're going to use name. Then we're going to add a plus, and then we can use quotes to start a string of text. So I can do comma, space, how can I help you? A little question mark, close quotes. For some reason, capsed in. Let's close that. And I hit OK. So now I have this all set. If I come back to our name scene, I'll get rid of our little debug, and we can see this in action. So I'm going to just say Matt. I hit confirm. I hit password 11. My password's going to work. And it almost worked. There's one thing that went wrong, and that's how we set up our start trigger. With start triggers, you have multiple options, which is either start after the jump is done loading or the second it starts with the jump. So in this case, I want to change it to with the jump rather than after, because we're starting to see Kobe until after the jump happens, and then this fires. So we're going to start with jump. We'll do it one more time. I'll choose on Wig because I saw his name in the Q&A. Confirm. Do password one. I hit confirm. And now, Wig, how can I guess I'm not good at spelling. How can I help you today? So we have this all set up. I want to overcast all of the things we've done. We've done text entry with input fields right here. We've done voice interactions right here. We've made reusable components that we can use throughout different scenes. We've done conditions to make decisions inside ProtoPie. We've also done multiple responses. So inside tap, we have two different conditions that are happening under the same trigger. Inside that, we have compound conditions being used. We have animated sequenced motions right here with our button. And we also have the ability to capture and store variables and then reuse them in other scenes. Okay, I know we went a little over. Hopefully this was all good for you guys. And I think that's a little bit, I know we went over again, but hopefully that was all good. I'll pass it over to Adrian. I think that's all from us.
Yep, and then there's one more question. What about
Yeah.
testing error scenarios? Like creating an account, but the user has an account. Can I test that scenario?
Yeah, 100%. Again, this was just for a password scene, but if you make a user account scene and you create your own instance for your scenario, you can do the same thing that I did, where you're able to create error cases for your own flow. So anything you can create along that scenario is totally viable.
Okay, perfect. And I think the Q&A is, oh, there's one more. Artemis had a question. What happens if you add multiple variables in one flow? Do they show up as a debug tag separately in the scenes? Or are they being used, or do you have to show up in all the scenes in the flow?
That's a very good question. So inside your scene, you have two options for variables. You have one that I had just done, which is a for all scenes variable, which means this variable will be able to be transferred to all of the scenes or just one scene. So I'll create one just for the scene. I'll call it number, I guess, and it's going to have a number here. So in this case, I have our debugs turned off, and you'll only see that by highlighting the variable and then moving across to the far right. If I turn both of them on, we can see both of these variables, and both of them are on this first scene. But if I type just the letter C and move into our next scene, only name transfers to the next scene because this is a for all scenes variable, but you can have an unlimited amount of variables for your own scenes or to transfer between all scenes. It's kind of up to you, but again, if it's for your scene, it will only be located to this until you jump into your next one, and then it'll be a new fresh scene.
And it looks like the Q&A is empty.
All right.
If anybody has any more questions, please let us know. We wanted to thank everyone for their time today. Again, apologies for going over, but we are glad you stayed. Hopefully you got a lot out of it. There will be some follow-up regarding the session. So look out for an email and a copy of the webinar. You should be able to receive a copy. And then also it was live streamed, so it should show up on YouTube later, and we'll keep everybody updated. We do have another couple sessions, so if you weren't able to attend the full session or you came in late, we do have a couple more scheduled this week and next week, so feel free to attend, even if you have to stop by. But we really wanted to thank you for your time. Thank you for being a customer of ProtoPie, and we wish you the best luck with all your prototyping. Thanks again.